Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages. Welcome to Enforcing the Fundamentals with Doug Harding, a brand new podcast from At the Inn Studios. Doug has been a hockey coach for over 60 years. He's played, he's coached in major junior, he's coached minor hockey, he's helped mentor many generations of players through the ranks to get their best performance, not just in the game, but in life and whatever sport they choose to pursue, whether it's on the ice, on the field, on the court. It doesn't matter. His method of coaching really relies on the mental game. If you know Doug, you know exactly where his heart has been anytime he gets behind the bench or gets on the ice, and that is with making a player better between the time he steps on the ice and when he steps off. Doesn't matter what the age, doesn't matter what the skill level, doesn't matter what the year. If you're one of Doug's former players, please feel free to reach out to us at enforcingthefundamentals@gmail.com. No spaces, no capitals. For those of you that are watching on YouTube, you can see it at the bottom of your screen. In this very first episode, Doug was sort of taken by surprise. I pitched this idea to him and I hit record moments after, and we really get into his first coaching gig, where his mentality came from, and we're going to follow this all the way up to the late 70s, early 80s in the Victoria Cougars system in the major juniors on Vancouver Island, British Columbia. Please reach out and let us know if you've had positive experiences with Doug or even negative experiences with Doug, which I don't think there's going to be that many of, to be honest with you. And maybe you can come and join us and share exactly what it was that really helped you get over a hump, or what it is you're still using in today's life. We have 3 episodes currently in the can, and I'm going to stop wasting your time. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the wisdom of Doug Harding. All right, Doug, tell me about your early experiences of hockey and what led you to coaching.
Oh, it's a long story ago. I was only 13 years old. I was in grade 8, playing at a public school and minor hockey, but playing at a public school. And I was the captain of the grade 8 team, and we had a grade 7 team as well. And season was going along, and then at Christmas time, the teacher that was the coach of the grade 8 team, which did everything during the week, his wife was pregnant, and she said that he had to stop because the grade 7 team was all on the weekends, and so therefore he was spending his weekends at the arena with a bunch of the school kids. So he went in and told the school that he wouldn't be able to do it any longer, and they said, "Oh well, we'll have to cancel the team." Well, I had been helping him coach the team because I was a captain of his grade 8 team. And I said, well, that's, gee, that's, the kids aren't going to be able to play, and the parents all came to the school and they said, well, this is not fair that their kids won't be able to play. And they said, well, we don't have a coach. And these are the days when anybody would coach would be accepted. And I said to our teacher, I'll coach. He says, I'm with them all the time anyway. And he said, well, no, I don't think the parents will accept that. And I said, well, can we ask them? Because I don't want to see the kids not playing. I mean, it's a public school league and it's all paid for. They don't have to pay for anything. They just get to go out on Saturdays and Sundays and play. So he approached the parents, and the parents said, yeah, that would be okay if I was coaching. They would probably have a parent or something come with me, and then I could do the coaching and the parent could watch the game. And I thought, well, that was pretty cool because I still got to coach. And it was the first time I'd ever actually been able to coach other than helping out at hockey schools with the little kids. And I really enjoyed that. And So we went and we did 2 games with the parent on the bench, and the parents turned around and said, we're going to be in the crowd. We don't have to be on the bench. You got control of this. You know what you're doing. The kids are playing very well. And this is the Lord Roberts Public School in London, Ontario. And this is the 50s. So they played their league out, and they had won quite a few games. And then it came to playoffs. And this is a small school. I think we only had 10 or 11 players on the team to begin with. And the school had never won anything. We went to the playoffs, and we played a round robin with the other schools, and then they were eliminated. And then there was a semifinal, and lo and behold, the kids really came to play, and they won. They won the semifinals. They won the semifinal game. We were going to the final game, and it was against a Catholic private school. Although it was a public school, it was a public school age. And they hadn't lost a game in like years. I think it was St. Mike's. It's not St. Mike's, Toronto, but St. Mike's, London, Ontario. And we were being told by everybody, oh, you guys did such a great job. That this is really wonderful. That you guys could, even finish out the year, and you don't even have an adult on the bench. And, so we went into that game, and the kids played really well. Goaltending was super. This team probably should have beaten us by a considerable amount of goals. And come the end of the game, we were up 3-1. And we won. It was the first anything that the Lord Roberts Public School in London, Ontario had ever won anything. And the city recreation director came to the school to give the school the picture of the team and the trophy. And he offered me a job. He said, hey, listen, you did really good with those kids. How would you like to come and work in our parks and recreation, in the summer in our recreation programs? And like I said, I was only 13. I was coming on to 14. So that was my very first coaching experience. And it turned out to be a very positive experience. The kids got to finish the year. They got to finish playing hockey, which got them an extra couple of months. And they won a citywide championship against all of the other big schools. I think Lord Roberts had a total school population of about 150 kids. So it was quite a start to an adventure in coaching. I mean, I was still playing, obviously, and trying and wanting to play more at as high a level as I could. But I really enjoyed the coaching. I enjoyed the guiding the team to, its ultimate goal. So, yeah. And that was 59 years ago. And I've been coaching now since that time, right up until last year. And that's 59 years of the same job, which is exciting nowadays. Nobody worked for 59 years.
That's really impressive. So you're saying you're in your early teens. So I don't want to age you. So that's going to put it at what, the early 60s you were doing this?
Yes, it was.
Okay. So
yeah.
Were you the player coach on this team? So you're out there, you're on the ice as well as behind the bench, or
no,
were you just behind the bench?
No, just behind the bench. I was the captain of the grade 8 team, but I was the coach of the grade 7 team. So
okay,
it was they were two separate teams. So like I said,
so you were a little busy. The parents driving you back and forth were they sitting in the stands? Were they dropping you off, picking you up? Were you hauling on hockey gear, uphill both ways in the snow on the way home, or what?
Mom was a real follower of making sure I got to wherever I wanted to go to as a kid. And I played a lot of things. I played a lot of baseball and a lot of soccer and a lot of hockey. And Mom wasn't really big into going in and watching, but she spent many, many years sitting in the parking lot waiting for me to get done. And but wasn't too enthusiastic, especially about the hockey, of going in the arena, sitting there and freezing her butt. So
she sat in the parking lot in the dead of winter in Ontario and froze her butt.
Yes, you got it.
Not chain smoking at all. So how long was it between this first coaching experience and your next? Did you continue this through the school, or was it just sort of a one and done for that year? How did that look?
Yeah, no, you know what, I kind of volunteered and did some hockey school stuff with anybody's hockey school that was going around, because you know what, it didn't matter whether they're a lot older or a lot younger. I've always really enjoyed working with kids, especially kids who are motivated to be better and looking for a way to be able to be better. And it's not hard. Um, Positive motivation, strong reinforcement, telling them what their possibilities are, even if the possibility doesn't have to be, a great big huge step, just a little step. And the next day is just a little step, and the next day is just a little step. And that's a 60-year philosophy. Is you're never going to get to where you want to go if you want to be there tomorrow, but you can take that one step at a time, and you keep moving in the right direction. There'll be lots of things that will be in your way from getting there, but you have to stay focused. So staying focused and mentally strong are philosophies in life that I would like to spread to as many people as I possibly can, because you can get anywhere if you just keep going.
And that's a great philosophy for anything. I've spent a little time around you in the last 40, almost 6 years. So, yeah. I know that you have put a lot of work into this sport and, training up guys on various levels. So you coached the grade 7 team in the 1960 season. And then you would help out this at the hockey schools, but you were primarily focused on your own goals as a player after that, correct?
Yeah. And I loved playing hockey, and hockey was something that I did really well. My dad was a bit of an athlete. He actually, he played in the Boston Bruins, or Boston's Red Sox organization. He was a baseball player. He always wanted me to be a baseball player. So he didn't know anything about hockey because he was from Nova Scotia, and Nova Scotia was pretty much baseball country in the 40s and 50s. So
okay, so I don't know a whole lot about your dad. And for those of us that haven't picked up on this yet, if you're watching the screen, you might go, these two look really similar. Also, you probably didn't look too hard at the show notes before you clicked on this, because I am born of this man. This is my father. He's done at least one good thing in his life. Arguably two, if you ask my brother, but but he's done a great deal for a great many people. Now, I didn't have a whole lot of, just because of the other side of the country, and travel wasn't easy back when I was younger. So this is fascinating news. I did not know that Grandpa played baseball to that degree.
He was a phenomenal baseball player. I used to go to his baseball games when he was in the Army. Like, I didn't know him as a baseball player. He lived in Yarmouth, Nova Scotia, and he'd catch the ferry across to Massachusetts to play baseball for the week or weekend, whichever it was. So he was a sub-minor professional baseball player. And when I actually began to appreciate sports, and at a fairly young age, he would take me to some of his games. He played with the Armed Forces team, and he was phenomenal. He was, I just went, wow, you never miss a ball. But he really wanted me to be a baseball player. So he trained me to be a baseball player. And up until I was about 12 years of age, which is just about this time I switched to
took
hockey.
over coaching in hockey. Yeah, absolutely.
I was a baseball player of note in Edmonton. We lived in Edmonton at that time. I had he was my baseball coach. My dad, as far as a single coach teaching skills go, was the best coach I ever had. My dad had things that he did not do particularly well in his life, but as an inspirational coach, I learned the core of my 60 years teaching from what my dad taught me.
Okay, so I was today years old when I discovered this, because I mean, when I was growing up, there was literally decades between visits. And I think I only really remember one visit back to Ontario where he was still alive. He passed before I was able to make my next one, and that was probably, oh God, 15 or 16 years in between trips. And, you know, it's neither here nor there because, you know, like I said, travel was a little more difficult back then. And to be frank, the airplanes fly both directions. So there is a little here and there on that. I'm just now learning this. So and this is a theory that I have been thinking of pondering, especially in the last few days as I've been thinking about doing this. There are coaching techniques, and I think that is really key for what I'm attempting here with this whole podcast. It doesn't matter what sport you're in. There are techniques and there are methods. It will go from baseball to hockey to football to American egg death ball football to basketball to cricket to anything else. As far as the mechanics of the sport may be different, but many of these, I guess, building up the athlete rather than just their body are fairly universal, would you say?
Start of my whole philosophy way back when I started actually coaching in junior hockey. I started to discover some of the reasons that I was successful were not because I was the strongest, the biggest, the fastest. It was because I was more determined than that. You can practice, but it's a mental practice. Okay. And it's something I have looked for in almost every kid that I've worked with for the last 60 years is, you know, what's his personal mental strength and determination of where he wants to be with his next step. And the kids who have that are successful to whatever level they want. I mean, they can stop anytime they want. But the kids that choose to be more successful choose to do it and mentally maintain that balance of determination with natural skill and ability. But the real top athletes don't get to be top athletes without having it all. And a lot of kids are very, very skilled and mentally softer. In other words, they're not as determined. They're not as focused. And yet they've got better skills than those kids who are. But the combination of those things are what I've seen over the years make super athletes. And I've had the fortunate circumstance to work with or get to know a lot of really, really exceptional hockey players over the last 60 years. So.
Okay, and we can get into, you know, we'll drop some names down the road because there's some I'm sure just in telling the stories, because there is one particular story about my personal hockey experience where we can't not drop the name, and we'll just let that one sit until it gets time. But there will be at some point we'll be dropping some names, and that's not for anything other than the purposes of the story. Because I mean, if you were going to do that for the purposes of profit, you'd have done it years ago. Now, you spent a bunch of time. You were in school. You were in private schools playing hockey, correct, on their teams for many years. Through
3 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
I went to in Nova Scotia. I mean, my dad was in the services. So you hear my dad doing Edmonton, me doing London, doing Kingston, doing Petawawa, doing Gagetown, doing this. That's because I moved almost every year when I was growing up as a kid, which the sad part about that is I don't have a whole lot of, you have those friends from childhood.
Yeah.
I was never there long enough to develop one of those.
Right.
But I got to know the country really well. I love the country. So
yeah, because I've over the years I've found out a few things. I didn't know you lived in Edmonton for the longest time, and I know that eventually the family settled in Oshawa, where we still have family settled down there, whereas you settled out in BC. and we've been a little here and there over BC. I mean, we didn't move as frequently
No.
in the 80s and 90s as you did as a kid, but I think, it seems to be a thing of that generation. And, mom also moved a bunch, but that's neither here nor there. So as you're going through school, you're playing hockey. What was your next step? You came out of school, and then what happened? You finished your grade 12.
I finished grade 12 at King's College in Windsor, Nova Scotia, where, I mean, it was an exceptional school for me because schooling wasn't something that I liked at all. But I did it.
At all.
Yeah, I did it. And, but it was an exceptional athletic experience as well as I actually finished school. And I got a scholarship offer to a U.S. university, which, there weren't many of those being given out in those days. And that was my next step, is leaving Windsor to head to the United States on a hockey scholarship.
All right. So you went down to the States on a hockey scholarship.
Mm-hmm.
How long did you play on that?
3 years. I kind of left there to, again, schooling. I took everything in the beginning of school that I really wanted to take, and then it was a question of getting down to all the things that you had to take to graduate that you weren't really fond of doing or felt capable of doing. So, with a year left to go, I went off to play hockey.
Okay, so with the exception of playing hockey, I feel that right now you and I had a similar experience.
There's a theme here.
I didn't have as much direction, but there was a certain point where I know exactly what you're talking about there.
Mm-hmm.
So, and you were in what university down there?
The University of Vermont.
Vermont, that's right. I knew it was something up in the New England area.
Yeah.
I knew you recently went back there and saw some. Well, I guess not even recently. It's been a few years.
Mm-hmm.
So you come out of the University of Vermont.
Mm-hmm.
Now this would be about the time you're looking at a professional career, correct? Going
Yep.
up to,
Yep.
Was it still the Big Six at that point? Because we're probably talking late 60s, early 70s.
Yes, early 70s. 70, I think it actually was 70 or 71. Anyway, okay. Yeah, no, I played a little minor pro hockey, and then I basically decided that my role as a hockey player, because there was something else that I used to do as a kid, is I used to box a lot. And I've been to a couple of Golden Gloves. And hockey in those days, if you were big and fast and could score a few goals, and you could take the
hold on, time out.
No, you don't want to get into this.
I gotta hit on something. There's once I set up a heavy bag in the basement one day, and you said, "Could I take a try?" And you throw on the gloves, and I just stood there in fucking awe. As to, I mean, this bag turned out sat at a 45-degree angle for a good 90 seconds while you wailed on it. Now I knew you were not the Gretzky sort of player.
No.
You kind of, whereas you had the skills, you may have gotten in the penalty box a couple of times. So the Golden Gloves thing, also today, years old. I'm learning so much in the last 21 minutes and 10 seconds. So keep going. Golden Gloves. You were playing hockey.
It was a pretty extraordinary, I was a pretty good athlete. The Golden Gloves were a lot of fun, but I played. My dad made sure that I played not just hockey, not just basketball, not just baseball, but he would make me come out and golf with him. And when I played football when I was in Ontario at school, and when I went to Nova Scotia, there was no football, so I played rugby. And they had an exceptional coach who was a headmaster at our school, a rugby coach, and we had an exceptional group of athletes there at the school, and we did pretty well in rugby. And I even got offered the opportunity to escort the this is a good story, escort the British submarine squadron that was stationed in Halifax. They wanted some rugby players to go and play in a national rugby tournament in Ottawa. And so they asked the school if I could go if they would allow me to go with them. And our headmaster, being a rugby guy, thought that was pretty cool, and he was English. So I got to go and play there. And in that tournament, there was a rugby club in Ottawa that was, I believe it was the Marilomas. Anyway, I had played so well in that tournament for the British Submarine Squadron. I got asked to come and participate in the national team summer camp, and that was pretty fun. So I could tackle a moose and I could kick a rugby ball a mile. So I got to play fullback, which is not exactly the same as a fullback in football, but we got to be the last guy to make the tackle and the first guy to pick up the ball and kick it back down there to the other end. So, yeah, so rugby I did pretty well at, and hockey did pretty well at, and yeah, I loved all kinds of sports. It didn't matter. And the Golden Gloves and the boxing was cool too. So there wasn't anything that my whole life was, as a youngster, pretty much about sports. But you begin to learn lessons in those as you move up the elite statuses of these games. Hockey, going to the University of Vermont, pretty skilled hockey player. But my dad had always taught me that winning was everything. Where have you ever heard that about old-time coaches? Yeah. And he says, if your team loses, it's your fault. And I played exceptionally well, and my whole direction was to make sure that we won the game. And a lot of times that worked out pretty well, but it can make you pretty selfish too. And
absolutely,
at the University of Vermont, we played. They had freshman teams then. You weren't allowed to play varsity hockey in those days right off the bat. You had to do at least 1 year and prove you could stay in school before you could play varsity. And we had a freshman team, and our freshman team played against our varsity team. And we had some other really good hockey players recruited from Canada. And we beat the varsity team 8-1 in the preseason game. And so our freshman team was being well spoken of. We had played a series of exhibition games in the United States against Tier 1 teams. And at that time, the University of Vermont was just a Tier 2 team, second division. And that was because of funding, as how much money the school was willing to put in it. And Vermont didn't, at that time, needed to sort of play a few years. There had only been a program for 2 years. And it was kind of strange going there because I could have gone to a Tier 1 school, but I chose Vermont because it was small town. And the other one that I had to choose from was Boston University. I went there, and it was like in the middle of downtown. And it was too big a step for me to come out of high school in Windsor, Nova Scotia, to go right to living in downtown Boston. It didn't matter what kind of hockey it was. So I chose Vermont because it was really cool. But I struggled. For the freshman team did very well, but at the varsity level, the coach, it was the most shocking thing I'd ever heard. So kids, if you've ever heard anything shocking from your coach, he basically said, I'm building teams. I don't need individual players. And I'm going like, don't you want to win? Yeah. And it was shocking. It took me 2 years to learn that lesson. And by the time we did that, we won 2 national championships at our level. And when I left Vermont, he actually said, you know what, I'm sorry to see you going. He said, you sure you don't want to stay another year? And I said, well, it's just a lifetime situation. It was time to move on to, finding a career to go. And but my career to go in that first little while was all about going back to the Golden Gloves, East Coast Hockey League. They love guys who can do stupid things. And it's not something I really, really enjoyed, but it was something that was part of the game and important to the team. And I spent a lot of time in penalty boxes. I thought I could double my playing time if I don't go to the penalty box. But then again, I wouldn't have any playing time if I hadn't gone to the penalty box.
Now, okay, there's a couple of things I need to address here. So
Yeah.
you're talking about, I'm going to go back a little further in the conversation. You're talking about taking 2 years to learn the lesson of I'm building teams and not individuals.
Yes.
However, from listening to you earlier, it seemed like your natural instinct, because you did really well with the 7th grade team, your natural instinct, because they did so well, it sounds like a Disney story that naturally you were building a team back in 1960 something or other.
Yes.
Would you say that's fair?
Yeah, that's
And then
fair.
yet still, now that might have been more subconsciously, and yet still on the conscious level, you had to relearn that, let's say 6 or 7 years down the road. That
Yes.
do I have that right here? Because my mind's
Absolutely,
reeling. I'm
100%.
today years old on so many things right now, and I'm trying to focus on you. So you'll notice that our screen has dropped in and out on the video where it's just you. And it's because I catch myself sitting there cross-eyed and drooling going, I didn't know this.
Yeah.
So the next thing I want to drill on real quick, because I know you do have company coming. Your playing time, if you weren't, I don't want to use the G word, but a bit of a goon.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, the
Depended
enforcer
on
is probably the more politically correct term. Goon's a little goon seems like a little less skilled. You definitely have the skills because you've been able to teach them. So the enforcer of the team. But hockey was like that back then.
Yes.
You had your and we're just gonna go right to the greatest of all time. You had your Gretzky, but on his line was your Semenko. Right?
Yeah.
Like you always had your star player, your pure skill, and then you had the guy that made sure he was able to find the space.
Yes.
Or that if he didn't find the space, whoever rung his bell was going to think more than twice about doing that. So would you say you ended up more in an enforcer role?
For the team, and there wasn't necessarily on the team that I played on a superstar to protect, but it was considered entertainment in the old East Coast League. You know, I mean, people came to see fights, and if you had the best fighter in the league, then you did okay. I kind of walked into it because I got into a fight with a very big name, which wasn't a big name at the time, and it wasn't him; it was his brother. But I got into, in a preseason game, got into a fight with the East Coast heavyweight champion, who was Ray Schultz, who was Dave Schultz's older brother.
Oh, Jesus Christ!
And this is a really cool story because it kind of shows it.
The last time I heard a story about Dave Schultz, I was on the Chris Jericho cruise talking to Ted Irvin. So,
all right.
I mean, this is what I had said to him at the time, because when I see Ted on the cruises, I talk about you and your stories, and I'm like, you guys never cross paths that I know of, but I hear stories from Dad, and I've heard stories from you on the same people. So okay, so you got into it with.
Anyway, Ray was the East Coast heavyweight champion the year before, probably for a few years. Dave hadn't come into pro hockey yet, and our coach Pat Kelly told me to watch myself. I got cross-checked to the ice, and then he said, kind of watch it. He's kind of looking to see who's going to stand up on our team, and nobody on our team was standing up. So I got cross-checked again, and I was looking down, bent over, and I could see his gloves drop to the ice, and I just dropped my gloves, turned around, and hit him. And I hit him really good. So maybe it was a lucky shot or whatever, but it was in Syracuse newspaper the next morning, new heavyweight champion of the East Coast Hockey League. And it was a picture of Ray on the ice. And I'm going, but after the game, as I don't know whether this happens very often, but we were in Utica, and Syracuse is just kind of down the road. And I've lost my picture again. Anyway,
Going.
I'll finish the story. Anyway, so came outside after the game, and you know, the players were all sort of standing around having beers together, both in the dressing room and out of the dressing room, which was new to me. But he come over and he said, "You got one hell of a hard head," and he said, "That's probably the best shot I've taken ever." And I said, "Well, really great. I'm glad I could deliver it." And he said, "Do you want to go to dinner?" And I said, "Well, I don't know. We have to go back to Utica," which wasn't very far down the road. And I asked Pat Kelly. I said, "You know, he wants to take me out for dinner." He said, "Well, you can go if you want, but I'd prefer you didn't, because, you know, you two are gonna see each other probably again if you're staying here." So I said, "Well, thanks very much, but, you know, maybe next time." It was, you know what, there was, for what the fans thought was the brutality of that kind of a game, there was quite a bit of respect among players, for certain players, for the things that they could or couldn't do. You Yeah, a bully or a guy sent off the bench to accost another player, um, generally within control, making sure that they understood they were the top of the pile. But you didn't get guys necessarily going out to in uneven matches or uneven numbers doing incredibly stupid things. So there were like I had a lot of respect for him. I never did meet up with him again. I kind of moved on, and they stayed in the East Coast League there. But I had a lot of respect for him to come over and say, "Hey, you want to go to dinner?" He says, "That's a hell of a shot." Like, I don't know. I think I could do that to somebody that just poked me in the face and knocked me down. So old stories. Old stories.
And that's interesting, because it sounds like, I believe, I have a godfather that I haven't seen in decades. A very similar story. The two of you got into a scrap on the ice, and you just became fast friends afterwards. I mean, it honestly, and this is something that I have, I don't want to say studied, but I have watched and I have listened and I have learned a lot about it. It sounds a lot like pro wrestling, where it's like, all right, that was a good one. That 5 minutes we had to scrap her out, and you're bruised, I'm bruised, I'm missing a tooth, you got stitches, you want a beer? I mean, that's, I mean, not necessarily as written, but there's that mutual respect afterwards of, yeah, okay, this guy can go. Now we have a little extra time. I've just been informed by your handler, your booking agent.
So who do you want to talk about, George, next?
No, we'll get into that down the road. I want your next major coaching experience.
Okay, but actually, after playing at university, I got the chance to do some local hockey camps in Ontario during the summertime, and I enjoyed doing them. And my hockey playing career ended with a torn Achilles tendon. And our local junior A hockey team was a very good junior. This is in Pembroke, Ontario now. So you get to see the whole country. I was home. I was done. But one of the coaches on the team came to me and said, "Hey, look, you know, would you like to help out with the team?" I said, "Well, I'm kind of on crutches and walking here in a cast, but yeah, I'd love to." And that team went on to the Centennial Cup, which is the Royal Bank Cup now, I believe. But that was a good experience. They were a good hockey team, but it got me back into that coaching mind with a coach that I had experienced when I was a kid, actually, all the way back in London, Ontario. No, Kingston, Ontario. That I got kind of reacquainted with, who actually got me into a higher level professional team tryout. Just to go to the tryout was a life dream, you know.
Okay, what team was that?
I got to go to a training camp for the Toronto Maple Leafs, so that was fun. It was eye-opening. But this gentleman that got me there was their fitness and conditioning instructor he was doing both Toronto and Detroit in those days. And he called them up and he said, I had this kid as a kid, and he did something for me that he didn't have to do. And he said, can we get him into camp? And they looked at what I'd done as far as hockey and high school and college and short pro, and they said, he's not good enough to be here, but if it's as a favor to you, sure, we'll let him come to camp. So it wasn't I got there because I was the next NHL superstar. I kind of got there because favor was owed. So I always pay out a favor in hope that it'll return to me, and lots of times it does just return. So, I mean, it was he took me on in Petawawa and trained me all summer long, or actually longer than summer, and right up until training camp time. And I had a phenomenal camp. I have a picture from Johnny Bauer, who was doing the player development at that time. He just recently retired, and he said I was going to be a Toronto Maple Leaf. And 13 days later, after the camp, I tore an Achilles tendon. So it was off to home, and my real first coaching job. I went into Pembroke and helped them out, and as a come on. And then after that year, we moved out to Victoria, and I started coaching minor hockey there, and that was 1973.
Okay.
Even I've been coaching steady ever since.
Now, Victoria has a bit of a special place in my personal heart. So you were there in 73.
You remember Jeff Courtnall running you over, do you?
Oh, see, we weren't going to get into that. Okay. I was saving that particular one. And I think, yeah. Anyway, we'll get into that down the road. Yeah, we'll get into that down the road. Maybe we'll see if we can get Jeff, get in contact with Jeff, see if we can get his version of the events, because I would love to hear that. Because and I don't want to get too deep into it, but one of the things I remember right before all of the pain hit was the look on his face when he got up and realized what he had just done. He thought I was dead. Anyways, Victoria.
Yes.
This is where, I mean, I didn't quite come into the picture, and in 73, I'm not that old.
No,
I still got good coverage and very little gray, so I'm not that old. But this is where I remember things. This is where I remember things picking up. Yes, before and after on your screens, ladies and gentlemen. You can pitch which one is which. So, how did you get involved with the Victoria Cougars? What was the story there?
Well, I had been coaching with their local one of their local junior B teams there, and having quite a bit of success with not very much talent. But again, it wasn't the talent; it was the enthusiasm, the heart. Go out, play as hard as you can. If you win, you win. If you don't win, there's always tomorrow. So we did fairly well, and at the summer, I thought, in the summer, there was a brand new arena, the Oak Bay Recreation Center, brand new. For you people who want to tear it down, it's too old an arena. It was brand new in those days. And I thought, well, I'm going to run a summer camp for some of the kids around here. So I went took some of my junior B kids and some of the midget kids from the Victoria Racket Club. That's where I first met Jeff. And we bought some ice time at Oak Bay Recreation Center. I thought it was a little expensive. It was $30 an hour for you people who are paying for ice right now. Think on how old that must be. And I put them on the ice, and we would do 20-minute skate, which is instructional skate, because that was my thing. I knew how to skate, and I knew how to teach skating. And then we'd do about 40-minute scrimmage, and then we do another 20 minutes of like line drills 3-on-2s and stuff like that. And we ran that every day. I mean, every week, starting in April, right up until hockey camps began. Well, I only ran a couple of weeks, and then all of a sudden, some of the Victoria Cougars that were there had said, "Hey, can I come out and skate?" And I said, "Oh, for sure. The better hockey player we have out there, the better the young kids will get the experience of playing." So we got Tori Robertson and Jordy, and we had guys like Barry Peterson coming from Nanaimo, and anyway, there were a lot of guys that became future NHL players. And we had John Newberry, and I'm throwing out all these names, which I'm hoping not too many people recognize as too big.
That's okay. We'll lift with our knees, not with our backs.
They all came out, and then the coach at the time was Patty Janelle. And Patty came down to watch the workout, and he said, "This is really great." Patty's a hard guy to get to know and was a hard guy to work with. It's just, some guys are, they have a tough profile, and they really want to bring that. And then Jack Shoup came in the next year as the next coach of the Cougars, and then we started there a lot with the summer program and the hockey development program. And towards the end of the summer, he would bring in some of their top prospects to join into this camp, and I was just having a blast. Had one of the best kids I had there has been an NHL coach and an NHL long-term player. And again, I'm going to avoid mentioning names because I don't have to, but he was a great kid, hard-working kid. And
now, do you think this is somebody that would remember you enough that might
I don't know,
that might chime in?
I'll give you the names later, and then you.
Yeah. We'll deal with names later. I know a lot of names from having run around and been just an absolute holy terror to some of them, and then having run into some of them at other events down the line. But I think, honestly, one of the things that would be really cool is if we could get in touch with some of these guys. And honestly, I think, I don't think it would be much of a problem, because I feel that a lot of people will remember you fondly. I know that there were years where I wasn't playing hockey, but you were coaching kids that I went to school with, kids that were in my class. The kid with the locker next to mine, who was one of the more popular kids in school and had absolutely no reason to be nice to me. And I never once got the sense that he was only doing it because I was the coach's kid. He was just a genuinely good dude. But I know that to this day, the few that I still hear from once or twice a year, like, "How's your dad doing?" So I feel like you probably have a fairly good, heartfelt, positive impact on a lot of people's lives. And then there are kids that, only, maybe played a couple of games or a hockey camp with you. And it's one of those situations where it's like, "You look familiar. Where do I know you from?" And I'm like, "Fuck, do you play hockey?" "Yeah, my dad and my brother." And they're like, "Oh my God, you're Doug's kid." "I didn't know Greg had a brother." I'm like, "Well, no, I have a brother. Greg has an aspiration." He won't ever listen to this, so I feel safe in doing that. However, he can call me wrong. Okay, so you got involved in Victoria Cougars. How did you get into, like, you from Victoria? You really got heavy duty into the coaching.
Yeah.
Right. So then you were in Victoria for a while. You were the coach, correct? The head coach. Do I have that right in my mind?
With the Cougars?
Yes.
No.
So you were.
I was an assistant with the Cougars, helping, did summer programs with them, and did hockey development with them. Jack Shoup was the coach, and I really like Jack. From watching Jack on the bench, I learned a lot. Coaches in those days, their whole practice was 1-on-1 and 3-on-2s. We weren't very, very
diverse,
advanced and diverse in developing, team skills and activity and movement and play and so on and so forth. It was we depended a whole lot on natural ability of the players to be as successful if we were going to be successful. So yeah, the naturals. So we went out and hunted for the natural skilled players. And I began to realize that this is when I started to take on the extra that really makes the difference is the mental part of the game. And I'd hear stories about this and stories about this mental, but hockey was late developing in terms of understanding that the mental wellness and the mental determination of a player was almost as important as his skill level. Because like you mentioned Wayne Gretzky a number of times. Fortunately, I got to meet Wayne once with one of his old coaches, and I'm sure Wayne won't remember that 15-minute lunch, but he wasn't the fastest skater. He wasn't the biggest guy. He didn't have the hardest shot. Like, what skill did Wayne Gretzky maintain that was a higher level to make him a higher elite athlete? It was mental. I mean, he understood the game and he saw the game. And in our days, it wasn't a matter of just seeing; it was a matter of execution. Go as fast as you can, crash the boards, hit somebody, shoot the puck as hard as you could, break your stick, whatever. And I think he was the beginning of, not the beginning, but the generational player that everybody needed to emulate. And I don't know whether there have been some great hockey players since, and I've had the fortunate circumstance of getting to know some of them over the years, but nobody, absolutely nobody in my mind maintained the mental strength to play a game than what Wayne Gretzky had. So,
well, and that's really one of the things that have been said about Wayne. Is he was a different kind of player for the time. So he did need that enforcer. Because like you said, he wasn't the biggest, strongest guy. I mean, there's a couple of times you can go back in history, Wayne dropped the gloves and had to go. But at the same time, it was the era of, no, you stay here.
Yes.
We have this guy over here, and it rotated. And I do have it right. Like, Semenko was basically the first on ice bodyguard for Wayne. Am I correct in that? Like,
I would, Marty McSorley was
McSorley as well. Yeah.
A higher skilled hockey player than, but Dave had a job and he did his job well. And because he could do his job as well as he did, Wayne was allowed to do his job. And so was Mark Messier. And so,
yeah, and we can get into that. So, maybe one day we'll sit down, we'll analyze a team like that. But I need a lot more knowledge to ask proper questions for that. But Wayne's thing always seemed to be, to steal a term you may not be familiar with, even though it's an older movie, he could see the Matrix.
Yes,
he was Neo. He could see the code. He could see not where the puck was, but where it was going to end up.
Well, that was,
and that always seemed to be his level up. Absolutely. He was quick, not the quickest. He was agile. He was able to get to where it was going to be, but he could all, and you saw this in his later years. I just discussed this on my other podcast at the end with the other guys, Mike and Seb, that Gretzky, his biggest strength wasn't the pounding away the goals like he did in his younger years, because his goals, if you were to chart his goals, there's a steep decline in the later, almost 2/3 of his career. I haven't done the actual math and made the chart, but it seems that way. However, he had the puck and he's like, if I put the puck over there, he's going to put it in the net. And that seemed to be his strength for the later half or 2/3 of his career. And it's just that mental game to me. And this, maybe I've picked something up, maybe I've drawn something. I'm not the biggest sports guy, but does that sound about right to you?
Well, even more so, I think he had, well, they say, he had good vision, but I mean, it's, his dad has been quoted a number of times that Wayne's philosophy, where the puck is going to be, you don't chase the pucks where everybody else is chasing. Advanced mental, skill. I mean, he just saw what he saw and knew where it was going to develop to. And I mean, there are a lot of exceptional athletes in every sport, but I don't think anybody. Like his passing game after his goal scoring, part of his goal scoring career. I mean, I would watch video after video trying to study, what makes this guy a little bit better so that I can help the next guy do this or help the next guy do that. What can I show him that he might need? There's 16 sticks all on the way between him and the guy he's trying to pass the puck to, and yet his puck would be there. And I just that's that passing skill level of achieving, what the goal is, not scoring the goal, but achieving the goal. He took so much pressure off of his teammates by moving pucks at the right time to the right people that I think that's what made whatever team he went to mostly an exceptional team. When he was on the ice, the puck was always in the right place for them to, maintain possession or to regain possession. So
that's fascinating. Now we're creeping in on an hour here. So I really wanted to get a little further down the line on your coaching history, but I think what we're going to do is I think we're going to cut this here at Victoria. After Victoria, you went to Cowichan Valley up in Duncan on the island right before they installed the Expo 86 hockey stick. We just still on the side of the arena. It's been years since I've been through Duncan, but I think it was still there the last time we went through.
Yeah, somebody said they were trying to sell it now. It was just, but I don't know. The stick wasn't there when I was there.
Okay,
no stick, but it was a brand new arena too. Like,
well, there we go. And I grew up. I think I remember Victoria a little bit. I feel like I should remember what John Schwab. What was the head coach's name there?
Where
in Victoria? John?
No, it was Jack Shoup.
Jack Shoup. Thank you. Sorry, I'm literally sitting over here flabbergasted at all the things that I was today years old that I've found out. Even though for some of it I have lived. So I feel like I should remember Jack. I don't. I don't think I remember too terribly much until the Cowichan Valley days, but I definitely remember running around that arena. I definitely remember running around Nanaimo. So why don't we cut it here? I know you have company coming, you have dinner to get on the table. So I'm sure that your handler, your manager, your wife has chores for you to do. This was very last minute because this is just something in the last couple of days has been kicking around my brain. For those of you listening, as we record this, I pitched this idea. Let's see here. We're 55 minutes in. So let's say 65 minutes ago, and we just hit the record button and went. So we're going to pause it here. We'll get back to this story. As you're listening to this, I've probably recorded a bunch, done a bunch of post show and put them up. If you are enjoying this, please like and follow us. I'm going to have this up on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, Facebook, and a bunch of other places. Find our Facebook page, which I'm going to be creating. Like and follow us. We're going to get into some more of Doug's background, and we are going to get into some very sound sage advice that I can tell you for a fact, from having lived it, having seen it happen, can take you from a good player to a great player and move you up levels. And even if it doesn't, even if you are squarely, firmly beat because somebody else is just a little bit better, and that happens in athletics because there's only so many spots at the top, you will end up a better human being for it. You will be able to take these lessons into life, build up other humans. You might go into coaching yourself. So join us again. I haven't quite named this podcast yet, but come back and visit us. We'll sit down with Doug. We'll talk about the rest of his coaching career and the overview, and we will get into some stories down the road. We'll get into some dissecting some concepts and some sound advice. We'll see where all this goes. I have a big list, and I've only been thinking about it for about 36 hours. So thank you for doing this on such short notice. I'd like to thank your wife, my stepmom, for allowing this to happen with company on the way. And join us again next time. As long as you've had fun. You want to come back and do this some more?
You know what? I really enjoyed this, Matt. With 5 minutes notice, I now have a little bit more notice, but I hope that you know, anybody who listens to anything gets something out of what they're hearing that will help them in whatever situation they are in, and or whatever situation they want to move to. That's my goal.
And that seems to have been your goal for a really long time. And I can tell you from, you know, knowing some of these kids and still being in contact with them today, and some of which I've lost contact with and some of which I never really knew. I've just seen go from point A to point B. And, you know, there's been more than one time point B is on Hockey Night in Canada. It may not be for everybody because there's only so many spots in the league. But who's to say it's not you? Thank you so much. Join us again next time. Thanks for listening and putting up with us. And Dad, enjoy your dinner.
Thanks, Matt. And everybody else have a good dinner too.